Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. My name is Shawn Aveningo Sanders, and I'm thrilled that you could join us to celebrate poetry today. For those of you who may be tuning in to our show for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Beaverton, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box, where our mission is to help spread the love of poetry by curating and publishing work that stirs the senses. In addition to publishing poetry books and collaborating with writers from all over the country, we also hold a poetry chapbook contest every year. Our ninth annual contest is currently underway, and I'll share more details about how to enter at the end of today's show. Part of our commitment to our poets is to help them reach a larger audience through our Zoom shows. And boy, do we have a big audience today as we celebrate the winners of our 2025 Poetry Box Chapbook Prize. We have John Wojtowicz, our Designer's Choice winner. He's joining us from New Jersey. Katie Dozier, our Editor's Choice winner, will be sharing poems from Texas. We have John Arthur, a Grand Prize winner, also joining us from New Jersey. And our very special guest joining us from Ohio, everybody's favorite poet, George Bilgere, who was last year's contest judge. So let's get started with our first featured poet. John Wojtowicz is the author of No Lightsabers in the Kitchen, which was selected as our Designer's Choice Award winner by Robert Sanders. John grew up working on his family's azalea and rhododendron nursery and still lives in the backwoods of what Ginsberg dubbed Nowhere Zen, New Jersey, with his wife and two children. Currently, he teaches social work at Rowan College South Jersey. He has been featured on Rowan University's Writers' Roundtable and the Painted Bride Quarterly's Slush podcast. Several of his poems were selected for Princeton University's 2021 Unique Minds Creative Voices exhibition at the Lewis Center for the Arts. When not writing, teaching, or rolling around the yard, he enjoys monitoring bluebird boxes, volunteering at the Cohanzick Zoo, and flipping horseshoe crabs. Please welcome John Wojtowicz.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited and honored to open this thing up. I just wanted to thank Shawn and Robert for really rolling out the red carpet for us. Every step of this publishing process has just been beyond my wildest expectations, and the Poetry Box is just in a class of its own as for publishing. And the lineup is great today. I'm a huge fan of George Bilgere. I listen to Wordplay every Friday and read Poetry Town every morning. John Arthur's a great fellow Jersey poet and a fellow John, so you can't go wrong there. And if you haven't visited Lucy, you've got to go. And I love Katie's work, especially her haiku and her haibun. I feel like I'm getting a free MFA every time I listen to Poetry Space. So I just want to thank everybody for registering and showing up, and I hope your virtual parking wasn't too hard to find. So the first poem I'm going to read is from this beautiful new chapbook, and this one's about the beginning of a relationship. It's called Like a Yin Yang. You once told me that part of my allure was that you knew we wouldn't last. But after the night we came home kissing across the threshold, and I lifted you onto the counter, and as usual, you left before I awoke, but this time had locked your keys in the car. You didn't expect a guy who needed AA to have AAA. We sat on my stoop sipping coffee and laughed about how you thought my solution would involve an old coat hanger, though you were unsure if I owned a coat hanger. And when, in 3 months, I lost my license, I thought your solution would involve an ultimatum. But instead, you offered to drive me down the Blue Ridge Parkway with its 45-mile-an-hour speed limit and rhododendrons. I joked how 45 miles per hour should be the national limit, and asked you to pull over at almost every scenic overlook along the 469 miles of America's favorite drive. I think it was at Craigie Gardens, around milepost 364, that I told you how I grew up on a nursery, made 1,000 rhododendron cuttings a season, that rhodos were first classified as roses and are the national flower of Nepal. You said you couldn't picture me as a farm boy and laughed when I said in a husky voice, "That's because I was a nurseryman." I told you there was a free Tibet bumper sticker on my first truck and got heated describing the ongoing atrocities. You told me to breathe and then taught me to breathe. You told me how you attended 6 schools in 5 years, how you don't have a hometown or a middle name, how you love the homeliness of moss, the way it curates space. We conversed lying like a yin-yang on a road-worn Guatemalan blanket and fell asleep in the shade of a Catawba rhododendron as a nectarine sunset juiced the Appalachian Mountains. They're older than Saturn's rings and earthly bone. You stayed long enough to see my court clothes become my work clothes. So this next one, every once in a while, I do a workshop at the library, and the prompt I've given is to take something wise or wild you've heard from a kid and just take it as far as you can go with it. And like any good mad scientist, you've got to experiment with your own prompts. This one's called Fruit Guy. Each morning, my son and I pass an orchard on the way to his preschool, and this morning I tell him. This morning he asks, "What type of fruit forest is that?" I tell him it's an orchard, a fruit farm, and he declares, "Farms have animals." I tell him some farms have fruit, but again he insists that this cannot be true. And because I know better, I ask, "Who grows the fruit if not the farmer?" And my son responds, "The fruit guy grows the fruit." And believing I have him cornered, I declare the fruit guy is a type of farmer. But my son retorts, "The fruit guy is a watermelon named Mr. Banana." I am silent, imagining a Humpty Dumpty type watermelon with an unfortunate surname, waking up next to his watermelon wife, donning overalls and straw hat before heading out into his fields with basket and stepladder. And because this is a reality worth escaping into, I let Mr. Banana live. And if you read one about one kid, you got to read one about the other. So my daughter's 13 now. I once got banned from reading this poem, but I don't see her face in any of these Zoom boxes, so I think I'm good to go. It's called Shake Your Tail Feathers. My daughter is sulking in the bathroom because my blue gingerbread man arrived at Candyland before her yellow gingerbread man did. I approach with empathetic intentions for some new-fashioned, progressive parenting. But in between sobs, I hear sounds like she's pretending to be a chicken. Sob, balk, sob, sob, balk, balk, sob. I step away from the door. Her mother isn't home, and this one wasn't in the book. Sniffle, cluck, sniffle, cluck, sniffle, cluck, cluck. I have a vision of her sprouting feathers, and I realize I'm going to have to knock. Squawk, squawk, giggle, giggle, squawk. Flush. When I reluctantly ask about the chicken sound, she makes beaks with her hands, flaps her elbows, and twists to the tempo of make-believe accordion music. She tells me that sometimes when she has a sad thought, she makes a chicken noise. Another sad thought, another chicken noise, until she's laughing instead of crying. Holy Zen mother of mindfulness coping mechanisms for emotional regulation. And you might have had 1 or 3 of these little bodhisattvas at your house. Mine yells, "Shake your tail feathers, Daddy." And so I do. This next poem, it's a product of time theft from a job I no longer have. 19 years of education culminating in a good job. As I sit watching the hours tick at a good job, a secure job, a health benefits, pension, vacation time, sick day job, I think about my preschool graduation and how the whole class was asked to say what they wanted to be when they grew up, and how it felt like there were only so many options. Firefighter, doctor, farmer, teacher, police officer, athlete, scientist. And then one girl said proudly, as the teacher cringed, that she wanted to be a dolphin. I think about her often and really hope she became one. So all the poems in No Lightsabers in the Kitchen, they're all kind of domestic poems. So this one is a makeup poem after one of those fights that just kind of takes up residence. So this one's called Small Repairs. Small repairs. For a month, our bathroom door came open at the slightest tug of a cat's paw or the nose of a dog, and the day the knob finally clattered to the tile floor, I simply shoved it back on the spindle. That ought to do it. My wife and I played doorknob roulette for a week, each attempting to enter and exit without the knob coming off in our hands. But after a particularly trying day, the knob was slick with marital metaphors, which should explain to those with relevant experience how I ended up at a Walmart on a Saturday night, parked next to a Danny Trejo look-alike, who stepped out of his Bronco, one hand brandishing a receipt like a bounty, the other clutching a half-dead plant like a shrunken head. We nodded as we parted ways, absolved by fluorescent fog, men on separate missions, and when I returned home and we'd installed that Venetian bronze doorknob, we marveled at the ease of the repair, how we should have done it weeks ago. I know we have some form fans here, so I'm going to read a couple form poems. These aren't in the chapbook, but they're still fun. So this one's called, it's a pantoum. It's called I Want to Love Like Gomez Adams. I want to love like Gomez Adams. Yes, that Caramia madness for Morticia, but also the wild joy. Crashing trains with Pugsley, raising Fester from the dead again. To smother darkness with so much love, it becomes light. Yes, that Caramia madness for Morticia, but also the wild joy. Helping Wednesday rewire her electric chair, brewing poisons with Grandmama. To smother darkness with so much love, it becomes light. Even his normie neighbors get invites for cigars and sword fights. Helping Wednesday rewire her electric chair, brewing poisons with Grandmama, that same tenderness for Lurch and Thing, the family joining hands in seance. Even his normie neighbors get invites for cigars and sword fights, to toast the cracks, the curses, and Cousin It. That same tenderness for Lurch and Thing, the family joining hands in seance, tucking Aristotle in his tank with plots of revenge while Kit Kat needs the bed, to toast the cracks, the curses, and Cousin It, riding the banister, his investments plummeting into an 8-count tango. Crashing trains, lighting up brains, foxtrotting with the dead again. Yes, that Caramia madness for Morticia, but also the wild joy. I want to live like Gomez Adams, to smother darkness with so much love, it becomes light. And this one's a duplex. And I don't make my bed, and my wife's okay with that. You know, it's good for sneak naps or, whatever. So the unmade bed. It just kind of happened. She didn't, and I didn't, and the next day, same thing. Yes, and the day after that, same thing, until the rule wasn't a rule. That's right, you can erase some rules, discard some conventional wisdom, discard some of your mother's wisdom. After a few days, I thought one of us would crack. After a week, neither of us cracked. Our mornings easier to ease into, our evenings simpler to slip into. Next, we left dishes in the sink overnight. Yep, we left the dishes in the sink overnight. We just let it happen. She did, and I did. Shawn, she mentioned I volunteered at a small zoo. And at the zoo, there's two African crested porcupines. And the one, Harvey, he's agoraphobic. And the other one is named Potato Greg, and he is just like whatever the opposite of agoraphobic is. So this poem's about them. This is called Dailiness. Harvey, the African crested porcupine, spent his formative years indoors and now gets stressed under big open sky. Maybe you've also felt overwhelmed by the bigness of the world. Maybe you've let something small but sure hold you. To help him adjust, his keepers are building a little porch so he can hang outside with the other porcupine who's all quills and sunshine. Sometimes what holds us is choosing what we know instead of sunbathing with Potato Greg. And sometimes what nudges us is a small shift in dailiness, a gentle breeze, warm mulch, apple slice snacking, fence post scratching, forgetting to look up until we do and find the sky has yet to swallow us. Here's another animal poem, and this one's from the chapbook. It's called Hardworking Stiff. On the back of the Archer's Exteriors van that advertises full-service windows, roofing, and siding, there's a cartoon giraffe with a tool belt and hard hat who uses a word bubble to tell me that no job is too tall. But instead of imagining my house with an easily financed facelift, the image provokes me to envision a world in which giraffes have taken our evolutionary path, where running across uncivilized savanna is history, taught in a high-ceilinged classroom. Yes, a world where giraffes slurp Wawa coffee with those 2 foot tongues before donning reflective safety vests, the fear of a lioness in the bushes replaced by a dip in the Dow Jones. I see this lanky foreman coming home after a long day of tall jobs, checking the mail, a couple of bills, and a catalog advertising a collection of scarves for the sophisticated mammal, addressed to his wife, who will soon reach her long neck down the basement stairs to retrieve a bag of acai leaves from the chest freezer and begin defrosting them for dinner. So I got 2 more here. I don't know about y'all, but I've been thinking about the apocalypse, a lot lately. It just seems a little closer than usual. And this poem exists in that space. It's called "Cleaning Up Chernobyl with Sunflowers." Sunflowers are hyperaccumulators of dangerous metals. They planted fields of them after the meltdown. I'm sure you can picture some hyperaccumulators of coffee cups, salt and pepper packets, ex-wives, stocks and bonds, nuclear arms. Sunflowers collect cesium 137 and strontium 90. Their roots scour the soil, transport these isotopes up elevator stems into leafy offices to be stored in the vaults of their heads. It's hard to smile thinking about a post apocalyptic world, but today I do, imagining some future human wearing a biohazard spacesuit, now an Earth suit, with a large sunflower stitched on the breast where you'd expect the bloom of a nation. He's genetically laden with my plotting gait, carrying a bucket of seeds and a rake, hoping like all farmers for warm sun and good rain. And the last poem I'm going to read is the poem that the collection gets its title from. So it's called No Lightsabers in the Kitchen. No lightsabers in the kitchen. Birds don't live in nests, birds nest in nests. I'm on the 12,678th day of my life on Earth, and I think this just occurred to me. I'll quickly convince myself I already knew it, but I know I didn't know. Mallards can sleep with half their brain awake, one eye open. Unihemispheric sleep was what the alpine-hatted park ranger called it. I learned this afternoon because my son and I went to the nature center to get out of our nest where we do live and have rules like no lightsabers in the kitchen, no pod racing in the hallway, Jedi sleep in on Saturdays. Sometimes I find myself longing for a secluded branch or tree cavity to fluff out my down feathers beneath my outer feathers, turn my head, tuck in my beak, and fall asleep. When I awake from what could be described as unihemispheric sleep to the pop of the toaster, I pop out of my bed, find my son on his step stool, armed with oven mitts, fishing a waffle out of a chrome ravine, humming the Star Wars theme. He shushes me. This is a surprise for Mama, but actually, it's good I am here. He needs help with the butter. And as our clamor rises with the chorus of dawn, I know the Empire doesn't stand a chance. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, John. Wow, this chapbook is just, it's such a fun collection to read. You had me with the title the first time I read it. And then, but hearing you read these poems is like a fire hose of fun. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. And there's just so much joy exuding from your poetry that, quite honestly, it's what the world needs right now. Um, it's literally impossible to have a bad day after reading a poem like The Fruit Guy, you know? And I really love the new Pantoum about the Addams family because I'm a big fan of the Addams family. So that you just nailed it. That was so good. So I just can't thank you enough for sharing your poems with us today. It was a real treat.
Thank you. And when you come to New Jersey, we'll let you see Lucy. But the Adams Family house is also here, so
Oh my
yes,
gosh,
we'll
I'm gonna
come
have to
by.
go to Jersey. Jeez.
I moved from a couple minutes from Lucy, and now I'm a couple minutes from the Adams family house. I moved the opposite side of the state, but yep.
Oh my God. You guys are like tourist guides for New Jersey.
Like, did we just
Great.
become best friends?
Yep.
Oh, thanks, you guys. Well, next up, we have Katie Dozier, author of All That Glitter, which was my selection for the Editor's Choice Award. Katie's love of poetry first bloomed as a child. She memorized Robert Frost sitting on a tree stump and bathed in Edgar Allan Poe as an adolescent. While studying words at Florida State University, Katie also played with chips and became a professional poker player. She's passionate about encouraging others to discover and share contemporary poetry through her social media, her Substack, and NFTs. Katie is the author of All That Glitter, Watering Can, A Month of Poems, and the co-author of Hot Pink Moon, A Crown of Hyben, and Did You See the Moon, Honey? She is the creator of the top-rated podcast, The Poetry Space. And if you're not listening to The Poetry Space, you guys really should. It's fantastic. I have learned so much. She's the haiku editor for One Art and an editor for Rattle. Katie lives in the Woodlands, Texas, with her husband, Timothy Green, their 4 children, and way too many books, as if there's any such thing. It's my pleasure to welcome Katie Dozier.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. John, that was an incredible reading. I loved it. I feel like we're writing on the same coin, and I'm on the mother's side and you're on the dad's side. Like our poetry has so many similarities, and I'm obsessed with the idea of the I wrote it down. The sunset juiced the mountains. Like, come on. Wow, that is an amazing line. That is incredible. So, thank you for that reading. John Arthur, I'm also really happy to be in this room with you. I've been a fan of you since Wayfair. I remember when I read that poem in my submissions and I was like, holy crap, look at this poem. Like, this is a poem. Very exciting. And George Bilgere, you know I'm a huge fan of you. I was lucky to have you on the Poetry Space too many episodes ago. We got to get you back on to talk about poetic hospitality, and you're the perfect model of that. And lastly, I have to say, Shawn Aveningo Sanders, you are incredible. You're a gift to poetry. You make the world better just by being alive. You're one of those people that is a bright light. I'm so happy that I get to know you and that I've gotten the chance to get to know you better through this opportunity. And Robert, I love the love you give Shawn. I swear I could just watch the Zoom and watch you looking at Shawn and it makes me feel so full of love. So thank you for that and thanks for all that you do. I have to say too, with this contest, I have a habit of not working on my own poetry as much as I would like to because there are always choices. Like this week, I wanted to do another episode of the Poetry Space, and it was a choice between spending an hour and a half doing some scansion because I'm really into working on formal verse right now and doing that, and I felt so guilty that I had to turn to my husband and say, like, is it okay to take time for myself? So I created this just to enter your contest because I believe in the Poetry Box so much and what you're doing, and it really did feel like a win just to enter because I thought I'm supporting you and what you're doing, and what you're doing is important. So thank you for doing it. All right, so I want to get into All That Glitter. I'm really excited about this. This is a look at I think I'm trying to think about the line that I put in when I entered the contest because one of the fields was like to enter a line and I said something like, can we see if you can really sparkle after a divorce or something like that? Which might be too much, but I'm too much sometimes, so you better prepare yourself. So I'm going to start out by reading the first poem. It's kind of a similar start really to how John started with yin and yang. I think it's a pretty similar start actually as an entry because I think if you're going to look at divorce, you have to see like a little bit of why that ended up happening. So, and this was first published in Frontier, and it was actually one of the first poems that I ever had published. And I like to say it's like 13 lines. I like to give people a clue going in so that they know when we're approaching. So it's about 13 lines. November in the National Gallery. Past 2 frozen lions, I waited for you in the white cafe with butternut squash soup punctuated by pine nuts. Some were blackened ovals, others untoasted teardrops. We never could cook at the right temperature. I swirled my spoon through chiffonades of sage floating on ribbons of cream, a soothsayer's brew. And when I drew it to my lips, I couldn't taste anything but the empty wooden seat of your chair. It overtook me, the collapse of a limestone cliff shoreline. The waves carried me through velvet wallpapered galleries where the paintings hanged from golden ropes with a weight you'll never see. I have to say too, I wrote that about literally waiting in a cafe that no longer exists in the National Gallery in London. And Tim and I were there actually a month ago, and I was like, oh, there are actually 4 lines. I screwed that up. So there's a little error in that poem forever. So that's all right. All right, so one of the topics in this book too is something that is very much part of my everyday mothering, which is that my youngest daughter, who's 6, Charlotte, is neurodivergent. She has a lot of challenges, but she's also a genius in so many ways. And it's fascinating getting to know her and learning how to best be her mom and how to best support her. So this is a hyven. So I see Maggie Chula is in the room representing the hyven crowd also. Fun to see you at Haiku North America in September. Anyway, so if you're not familiar with hyven, it's basically just like there's a body of the poem and then there's a haiku. It can get a lot more complicated than that, but if you're new, just think about it as looking like this. Basically, it can. Which I like to say too, because it can be awkward doing them at readings because people don't know if your poem is done or you're just on the haiku portion. So don't worry if you think I'm done and then I say haiku after. I will not be offended. Okay. So this is neurodivergent. Sometimes in the shower, I catch myself singing Pocahontas. You can never step in the same river twice. Well, what's so unique about rivers? Will she finally see us if we jump in 3 more times? Now I understand the beauty of bird watching. For me, it's not enough to say a cardinal's red when a Ferrari speeds by. While meeting therapist, her tantrums paint fire engines on the floor. But nail polish bottles are the best at names. I just can't Copacabana, shouts from my fingers. Sakura's so pink that my eyes dissolve her, cotton candy, and green helps me swing on the one strong vine. Asking her, favorite color, sea turtle. And as a happy update, I have to say at the point that I wrote that, that was something I was trying to get her to be able to respond to these questions. And I did ask her and she really did respond sea turtle. And I was like, what a metaphor. But now Charlotte is able to ask me my favorite color. She also loves asking what my favorite dinosaur is. And I have a boring answer like Triceratops where she knows like every dinosaur that's ever existed. And I'm like, yep, okay, that's a good choice too. I don't know it, but I believe you. And as John said, if you read a poem about one child, you have to read a poem about the other. And this book is dedicated to my 2 daughters too, so it makes sense. And this is going to be another hyben. And this one refers to my favorite board book, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. You guys must know it, right? Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. And thinking back to why I became a poet and what made me want to do that after poker playing, which is not mentioned in this poem. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. You could say my whole life took place in the shadows, behind the curves of letters, their humps and wild bumps curly-cuing darkness across my face. Bathing in the shade of a coconut tree, Mrs. Duncan said I was born to be a writer. So I scribbled even harder on her stapled sheets, colored a construction paper cover with a yellow crayon squeezed in the cave of my fist. Drew a girl with arms that stuck out straight, just like this, cueing yet more shadows. Unlike Plato, she had to pull me from out the desk after the tornado. Solar flare. My daughter asked the meaning of life. Because we all know those big questions just pop out when you're in the middle of making dinner and running late, am I right? Lizzie is like, she just pops out when like I can least handle a question, but I always try to. All right. And speaking of that, this one also mentions my older daughter, Lissy, and this is Watering Can. One thing that's fun with chapbooks is to steal what you think was the best poem in your last chapbook and put it in the new one. So we carry it forward with that. I also like how Watering Can has so many different meanings if you think about it. And thanks, John, who mentioned I'm super into haiku. Anyone who knows me is. If you think about watering can, it can mean, literally the watering can, and then watering can where you're spreading like inspiration, which is what I hope to do some of, and we know Shawn Aveningo Sanders does a lot of. So, watering can. I comb this garden for tomatoes that catch me like a butterfly in a child's net. How could anything be quite so red, so full of juice? From one bite, I remember all the fruit. How I ate every pineapple in a bid to ripen, to make my late babies come. And when I was so done, paid for fruit pre-sliced. Neat in boxes, yellow sun, as if life would always be so nice. Today, our old tuxedo cat died. But chirps spring out from the backyard. My little girl sings to the succulents. watering them from a can, a softer pour than ever before. Now she understands. All right. And I'm gonna steal something John did because I thought it was very clever. How he read a couple new poems and then shifted back to his title poem. So I'm gonna read one new poem and then shift back. So I'm gonna read two more. And so I wanted to read because I wanted to challenge myself with this. You guys might know that I create prompts for Rattle and I get obsessively involved in writing them myself, writing my own prompts, which is a little zany, I guess. And so this week's prompt is kind of a toughie because it's to write a formal sonnet. So I'm really working hard this week because it requires a little bit more. And I think we should spend more time on formal verse, even if I'm always going to be primarily a free verse or Haydn, probably poet. I think spending time on meter and getting back to our roots is important. So this is not in perfect meter because this is my first draft. It also includes a confession. So it's a first draft of a Shakespearean sonnet. I will say that. Absolute zero. There are places where they fix the potholes and places where they don't. I was a spring day in a winter marriage. Sat in a swing as if I weren't the one to kick. Control can be a thermostat, can be a troll making fun of poems that wear many hats. Pebbles must be born from boulders that were thought too big to try to roll. I threw his coffee cup into the pool. Electric, it still somehow held a charge. Some volcanoes flow with more heat. Large trees must become timber before fuel. Freezing is another way to get unstuck. Icicles, when pressed, often melt into luck. So that was a fun to think about the temperature shifts. And also the part of the process I had to put in an exclamation point, which I'm really annoyed I did that. It made the whole sonnet thing way harder. So sorry, everybody. So I'm going to read one last poem. And this poem is a sequel, which is my way of referring to an after poem that's very closely tied to the source poem. So I want to make sure, like, I would never read this poem without saying that it's a sequel after Maggie Smith's Good Bones, because it's very interconnected to Good Bones. It's basically like what I love about after poems is when they have something in common, but they really push beyond and they feel like a new meaning, kind of like how an ekphrastic poem has to push beyond describing just the art, or else it feels like just a summary. So hopefully that's not how this poem feels. Even better ligaments. Life is long, though I keep this from my daughters. Life is long, and I've stretched mine in a million ways that threaten to snap me, though I'll keep this from my daughters. Life is long, though my eldest doesn't believe it when I tell her to put on her tutu faster. As I pull her hair into a bun, she asks, "Why are we never running early?" Pirouetting through the rooms of this new house, the girl's house, the one we used to only dream about. Life is long, but have you noticed how here it smells like pumpkin pie spice instead of that anger I could never quite bake nice? In every silence, I think of the old coldness and find a knitted throw to wrap myself inside. In every silence, I know that just one pillar can hold up a whole home. To sell them the world, I bought the world myself, and we make this place beautiful. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. It's wonderful to see there's so many people here that I love, and it's a wonderful thing just to be in this room, let alone to have you choose to engage with my poetry. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Katie, that was wonderful. And I have read many, many poems about divorce, about the challenges of being a single parent, even about autism. And I don't think I've ever read such a compact, magical collection that takes on these topics and wraps them in so much love, so much awe, so much celebration of just the tiniest beautiful moments. We all know lots of poetry is written kind of with that motive to inspire others through difficult times, right? And this book really shows us how to do more than survive. You teach us how to be our own glitter bomb. And that life can be messy and it can be so beautiful. I'm so glad you entered our contest. I'm so glad that I've been getting to know you. I feel like your daughter and my granddaughter would have a blast together playing with dinosaurs. Um, but thank you so much for sharing your poems with us today and for being brave enough to share a rough draft, which is, well, way better than my end draft is going to be. But I'm struggling with the sonnet. Oh my God. Anyway, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks so much for saying that, Shawn. I really appreciate it. And that's my goal. I am a lot of glitter, and I hope that people like glitter. Thank you.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much. Next up, we have John Arthur, who wrote Lucy the Elephant Wins in a Landslide, which was our grand prize winner chosen by George Bilgere. John is a writer and musician from New Jersey. His work has appeared in Rattle, Diagram, Frog Pan, Fail Better, Tramp Set, One Art, and many other places. He has worked as a valet at a casino, a waiter, a Ferris wheel operator, a cook, a pizza delivery driver, a fast food delivery driver, a landscaper, a journalist, an editor, a librarian, a library director, a manager, and for one long hot day as a guy going door to door asking if you'd like to donate to the Sierra Club. Wow. No wonder you write such fantastic poems with a resume like that. It's my pleasure to welcome John Arthur.
Right. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much. I just want to say, Shawn and Robert, working with you to create this, my, first poetry collection here it's been a great experience. I sent the idea for the cover and Robert made it look better than I ever could have imagined. Thank you. And John and Katie, I love both of your work. Katie, I'll be honest, when you curated Wayfair for Rattle, I was writing, poetry for me is I don't have a poetry community. I just kind of write on my own. I'm this guy just sending stuff out. I don't really know that many poets. And when I got that acceptance, it gave me sort of an injection of, well, I'm actually doing this for a reason, maybe. So I'm gonna read that one later. But and then actually about a year after that, George shared that poem in Poetry Town as well, which was very nice of him as well. I actually didn't put it in the book because it was supposed to be anonymously judged, and he had already shared the poem, so I didn't put it in the book. But and I just want to say it's an honor having this book selected by George. His Cheap Motels of My Youth is one of my favorite chapbooks. I just finished reading his book Blood Pages, also excellent. I'm just really happy to be here. So I'll jump right in. I put the book together in kind of a strange way. I was thinking to myself that I wanted it to be like a 12 course meal. I know this doesn't really make any sense, but so I started off with a haiku because that's a little like amuse bouche type thing at the beginning of the meal. So I started off with a haiku. Um, so I'll read it twice. At the library, a mother carries her son into the mysteries. At the library, a mother carries her son into the mysteries. I noticed something else as I was reading through the book. I curse a lot, so get ready. But I'm a guy from New Jersey, and I don't know. There's a picture of my dad from like 20 years ago where he looks like Tony Soprano, so you're just gonna have to deal with it. This one's called Folklore. Before she was born, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be Taylor Swift. I said, Mommy, when I grow up, can I be Taylor Swift? And she said, Who the fuck is Taylor Swift? Every day after school, I pedaled to the 7-Eleven for Pepsi and a Chipwich and shouted, I am Taylor Swift. Once upon a time, I was a wood elf with two swords ringed by lightning, named Taylor Swift. My childhood dog, Taylor Swift. My collection of pogs, Taylor Swift. My dad wouldn't let me be Taylor Swift, so I screamed that when I turn 18, I will get a tattoo of the name Taylor Swift. But when I got older, a song came out by someone named Taylor Swift. I was confused by this Taylor Swift. You did not look like me, Taylor Swift, but I wanted Romeo to take me too, Taylor Swift. I asked God, and a voice said, the world only has space for one Taylor Swift. I accept the word of God, Taylor Swift. And I have to admit, Taylor Swift is already doing such a good job of being Taylor Swift. But who should I be if I can't be Taylor Swift? Taylor Swift. It has all been so painful. So I'm putting together the full length collection right now, and a lot of these poems will obviously hopefully be in there. And I'm thinking I might want to call it I Am Taylor Swift, just because I think it'd be funny. I Am Taylor Swift by John Arthur. I don't know if that's legal. If there's any lawyers here, if you could leave in the comments whether that's okay. But then again, why would she sue some guy who's going to make like $58 on a poetry book? So, I mean, who cares, really? So let's see. I'm gonna jump to a poem called Fanatic. And that's like the Philly fanatic, because I grew up in South Jersey. Sports fans down there are usually Philly fans, and the Philly fanatic is the greatest mascot in all of sports, other than maybe the Stanford tree, actually, just because why is there a tree as a mascot? But the Philly fanatic's pretty great too. So this is called Fanatic. The day you swung my Louisville slugger at me, and I caught it with my bare hands. You smacked my bare ass while Jimmy held my pants at my ankles, and I was getting harder each week from deadlifts, lunges, and power cleans, until Mom poured a gallon of milk on my head, the lactose sticky on my skin as I let it soak in, laying there on the dog smell couch where Dad drunk slept during Phillies games. We were there at Citizens Bank Park when they broke the record for most innings played in a game at infinity, and everyone left the stadium except for us. They're still playing. We're still there. Give a shout out to I think I see Mark Danowski out there from One Art. I think that appeared in One Art first. And I think at this point half my poems appear in One Art, so thank you, Mark, for everything you do. I've never met you, but you're awesome. Let's jump to another Atlantic City poem. Lucy the Elephant's actually technically in Margate, New Jersey, which is like just down the road. It's the same island as Atlantic City, actually. It's just further down the island. This one's called America's Favorite Playground, which is kind of the motto of Atlantic City, or at least it was. You see signs driving in America's Favorite Playground. This one comes from a question my daughter actually asked me. This was around the time that Trump was doing the tariffs and all that for the first time. And those two things kind of clash together in this poem, which I think is another One Art poem, actually. So, but anyway, my daughter asks if she can see a picture of gravity. She's 4, but before I can answer, more questions come at me, gleaned, it seems, from the TV. What's a tariff? What's a trade war? We buy most of what we own from the local thrift store. Just home from work, I sit next to her, still wearing my new old pea coat. Only $9.99, one button missing, but warm, enough to get me through at least the rest of this winter. Now the anchor is saying Canadians are expected to boycott. No more trips this summer to the Jersey Shore. When I was a valet in AC, I used to count the Ontario plates, smoking on the top floor of the parking deck, looking out at the gold-plated facade of the Trump Taj Mahal before it was demolished. It only took a couple of well-placed explosives. I show my daughter a video of the building imploding. That's gravity, I say. So we got a week here till Valentine's Day. I should do one for my wife, right? Um, this one's called At the Alexander Library. Taking a trip around New Jersey here. The Alexander Library is at Rutgers University. where I met my wife the first day I was there, actually. Um, so this is at the Alexander Library for Cushbu. We kiss next to Neruda. We kiss, we kiss, we kiss, we kiss, we kiss. There is an aftertaste. It lasts for 50 years. I hope it lasts for 50. I'm only 39, so hopefully it lasts for 50 years or so, maybe more. Depends how long I live for, I guess. Um, let's jump back a little. You know what? I'm gonna do Wayfair, which is not in the book. So this is the one that I said that Katie curated's the word you like to use, right? Curated for Rattle. Um, and this is for both of my daughters, Maya and Mira, um, called Wayfair. I spent most of the day putting the crib that came in 48 parts together, tightening every screw just enough, but not too much. The memory of its assembly living somewhere in me, while you dreamt inside it for 1,000 nights. It later taking only 10 minutes to disassemble and 1 minute more to box it up, put it out onto the curb where the city came to take it away. All right, so I'm gonna read one last one. It's a little long. It's the title, no, two more actually. Um, I'll read Atlantic Cape Community College as we do our tour through New Jersey here. That is the community college that serves Atlantic and Cape May counties, the two of the southernmost counties in New Jersey. Um, this was a time in my life I had graduated high school. I was going to community college for a year before I transferred, and I was working at a sub shop. And I actually got fired from the sub shop, which happens in this poem. Actually, very similar to what happened in the poem, so I'll just leave it at that. This fucking guy, my boss at the sub shop, every time he saw me spacing out, he'd say, "Quit philosophizing," and laugh and point to the grill where I was burning a cheesesteak, and the whole place smelled like sauteed onions, and I smelled like the whole place. My apron covered in canola and cheese whiz. My coworker, beautiful as hell, taking breaks every hour to pray to the Savior. Said if everyone else got to go outside and smoke, why couldn't she go outside and talk to God? No argument from me. I had my American spirits, and she had Jesus. Both blazed in our mouths and turned to ash as we stood side by side, listening to the seagulls circling overhead, waiting for us to take out the trash. And at the end of each night, I'd give her a ride. We'd sit covered in sweat in our post-shift sacred silence inside my old Taurus, my favorite ritual until I was taken off the grill. Sent to the back to do the dishes, which I left so greasy that first day, my boss gathered up my shit from the break room, came out holding my copy of the Metaphysics, shoved it into my chest, and said, "Take your Aristotle and go." Thank you. Oh, my Aunt Sue says that's her favorite. Thanks, Aunt Sue. All right. That sub shop, by the way, is called Rose's Garden Grill. It's in Northfield, New Jersey. It's absolutely amazing. And despite having been fired from there, I still went back for years and ate their stuff. It's really good stuff. And honestly, I deserved to get fired. I was like 18 and I was ridiculous. I don't even know why. I don't even know what I was doing. So I'm going to end with Lucy the elephant wins in a landslide. I guess a little backstory on this. So as you heard from my resume, I've had a lot of different jobs. Um, I actually work now as a municipal manager, essentially a manager of a city. And this one kind of comes from I was in an interview. I won't say what town, I didn't get the job, but the mayor said something like, "We're really proud of our tree-lined streets," or something like that. And I almost like wanted to run out of the interview because the poem started going in my head as I was in the interview. And anyone who writes kind of knows that feeling where you've got a poem cooking. I literally think I tried this. I was like just answering as quickly as I could to get to my car to write the poem. So that's probably why I didn't get the job. I probably should have just walked out actually right then and there. So Lucy the elephant wins in a landslide. We are proud of our tree-lined streets. They provide us with shade. We stand in the shade to avoid the sun. The sun gives us life, but too much will kill us. Everyone I know is an iPhone that cannot be recharged. My power indicator is at 50%. I want to wear a hat that is a solar panel. You should see these tree-lined streets when it snows. All the trees turn to cauliflower. The sidewalks are opaque mirrors casting inscrutable reflections. The mayor is perpetually presiding over a Christmas tree lighting ceremony. She strings the lights herself, one by one. She climbs the ladder and wraps the tree. She does this every day. When the tree illuminates the neighborhood, our eyes are pulled up, up, up. Now, we should probably talk about all of this, how all of this is happening in a small town in New Jersey, how there are hundreds of towns just like it, how this state is wedged between two great cities and an ocean, how the ocean is the greatest city of all, how all of these New Jersey towns have mayors stringing tree lights all the time, even during this past July, the most humid on record, how the most humid July turned the air to rancid soup, how many people are desperate even for rancid soup, how we need more soup. On my tree-lined street as a child, we hid corn in the woods. We kept it in a big hefty bag. Some older guys stole the bag and then no more corn. Then we got dial-up, so we didn't need hefty bags anymore. In the same woods at the end of the street, we drank 16 shots of Bacardi in 16 minutes for my 16th birthday. We puked for 16 hours after. When you put 16 minutes into a hat, say the right words, and pull them back out, they are transformed into 16 hours. There's a lot of magic in the world. Some of the magic in the world is made out of Ferris wheels. At the top of the Ferris wheel, we smoked a bowl. The ocean looks the same when you smoke a bowl, but it appears different. The ocean is rising, getting closer and closer to Lucy the elephant. People can sleep in her belly. I took the tour once. The most famous person to have slept inside Lucy the elephant was President Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland was once the mayor of Buffalo. Back then, Buffalo had some great Christmas tree lights. Thanks, Grover Cleveland. There was high tide. There was low tide. When Superstorm Sandy hit, I was scared for Lucy the elephant. I don't know if she remembers how to swim. When the next big storm hits, she'll be elected mayor of the ocean. She will invent underwater Christmas trees with underwater lights. I am learning to scuba dive so I can go to her inauguration. Thank you. "23 years later, I still can't drink Bacardi, by the way."
I think we all have a story like that, right? It's slow gin for me. When George Bilgere chose your book as the winner, he wrote to me, "These poems are spoken in one of the freshest, most compelling voices I have encountered in years." And so, wow, quite a testimony, right? And I have to say, he's spot on. I reread your entire chapbook yesterday, and I was trying to pick out a favorite poem, which is kind of impossible. But I have to say, I really do love the title poem, and I'm really glad you read it today because it's one of those poems that kind of sneaks up on you in the best way possible. You weave in some pretty heavy topics like climate change, homelessness, hunger, but you wrap it up in the string of those hopeful Christmas lights, and some humor. And it's just one of those poems I never get tired of reading because every time I read it, I find and feel something new. So that's what every poet strives to do. So bravo to you. And I really can't thank you enough for sharing your poems with us today. It was a real treat. Thank you so much. And now I want to go to New Jersey. So that's crazy. And that's something I thought I'd never say.
Thanks. New Jersey's awesome. If you come visit, let us know. John and I will give you the tour.
I definitely will let you know if we make it out that way.
Thank you all. Thank you, George. Thank you very much.
Well, our final featured poet today is the wonderful George Bilgere, who is one of my favorite poets and was gracious enough to agree to be our contest judge last year. He probably doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and give the formal one anyway because you all deserve to hear all these wonderful accomplishments of this man. Former U.S. Poet Laureate Billy Collins has called George Bilgere's work a welcome breath of fresh contemporary air in the house of American poetry. George has read his poems in the Library of Congress, the 92nd Street Y in New York, and the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. NPR listeners know him from his many appearances on the Writer's Almanac and A Prairie Home Companion. He has received grants and awards from the Pushcart Foundation, the NEA, and the Fulbright Foundation. He is a recipient of the May Swenson Poetry Award, the Society of Midland Authors Poetry Prize, the Ohioana Poetry Award, and the Cleveland Arts Prize. George won the Editor's Choice Award from the New Ohio Review in 2022, and in 2023, he won the Reader's Choice Award from Rattle. His 8th collection of poetry, Central Air, was published by the University of Pittsburgh Press, and his book, Cheap Motels of My Youth, was a winner of the Rattle Chapbook Prize. Wow! It is my absolute honor to welcome George Bilgere.
Wow. Thank you, Shawn. And let me just say, this was such a great reading. It was so great to hear all of these incredible poets. And I want to say, Katie's chapbook, John Arthur's chapbook, Shawn's chapbook, Pockets, which I've reread this week. It makes me, and the chapbook I published last year, that was the first chapbook I've ever published. And it makes me realize, reading over these books, I really like chapbooks. In fact, I kind of like them more than full-length collections, and I really like them more than those big collected poems that are about this thick. The chapbook is a distillation of what is best about this poet. And, in poetry, at least in my opinion, less is more. And I am delighted to be in the company of these great chapbook writers, and I want to do another chapbook. So it was a total thrill to hear you guys read. And you read these people in their books, then you meet them in the virtual flesh, and that's really a delight. And I hope all of us can get together at some point and maybe drink something that doesn't make us sick. So I'm going to read a few poems. And as John mentioned in his superb reading, we're coming up on Valentine's Day, and I'm going to read maybe a couple of poems that have to do with that. And this is a poem. I like to do my writing in cafes, and there's a cafe down the street from where I live in Cleveland. I hang out in. It's called Phoenix Cafe. And this poem is to this, what I would have said 20 years ago, this older couple. Now they're my age. But there's a couple that come in there to Phoenix, and they're in their probably mid or late 70s, and their lives seem so right, so rich and vibrant. It just gives you hope. And this is a poem called Arrival. I've seen that couple before. Mid-70s, I'd say, trim and gray, arrived here from a good life. They give off that we know what we're doing vibe, that sense of a fine journey behind them, full of kids and grandkids, dinner parties on the patio, summers in the south of France, and some very skillful navigation through all kinds of weather that got them here safely. A little fly blown, it must be said, but that's the 70s for you. One day he said to her, "There's this nice little cafe, good coffee. The toasted bagel with cream cheese is outstanding. It's about half a century from here. Why don't we go there together? And I'll read the Times, and you can kind of gaze off dreamily at the people passing by with your fabulous dreamy gaze, now and then taking a sip of your cappuccino." "Okay," she said. And there they are. Here's a poem for my wife as we move up toward Valentine's Day. If anyone watching this, any of the men watching this broadcast have been fortunate enough to be in the birthing room when your wife gave birth, you know that that's probably the most extraordinary experience of your life. I can't think of something more remarkable than that. It's just absolutely unbelievable to see your child who was not in the world suddenly come into the world, and there he is, or there she is. It's just astounding to you, but not necessarily to all the other people in that room. And that's what this poem is about. It's called Push, and it's for Jody. I'm trying to look as if I'm suffering. I have this anguished expression on my face, but it's wasted since I'm wearing a surgical mask. And anyway, the focus here is really on my wife, and the doctor is right there between her legs, and he's shouting, "Push!" And my wife is doing this astounding thing. She's pushing yet another human being into the world, a world that so far seems to be pushing back. And the baby's heartbeat is down to 90. And the doc says, I think we give it one more try, then we do the cesarean. So things in the room are really a bit tense. It's definitely a moment that demands a lot of attention. And my wife is gathering whatever shreds of strength remain in the shaking, exhausted sleeve of flesh her body has become, the blood and sweat and fluids everywhere. And this is it. When I hear the attending nurse standing just behind me saying to this guy in scrubs standing next to her, I think he's the anesthesiologist's assistant, she says, "Well, just because Karen says she has a boyfriend doesn't necessarily mean she won't go out with you." And the guy says, his voice rising because my wife really is screaming quite loudly at this point. The guy says, "Yeah, okay, I guess I should give it a try. I mean, what's the worst that can happen other than getting shot down and looking like a total fool?" And the nurse says, as the doctor is shouting, "Push!" She says, "Yeah, but hasn't it been like a long dry spell for you? Aren't you getting a little desperate here?" And the guy laughs, and my wife screams again, and the doctor says, "Yes!" And into the world comes the bloody head, followed by the naked, lovely, bloody little boy, insanely ill prepared for any of this. And I guess the guy actually is going to ask Karen out. And I say, go for it. So another day in the birthing room. And that really happened. That is ripped from the headlines. Here's a poem in answer. People watching this no doubt have been asked this question, but if you have kids, by your kids, how did you and mom meet? So here's my answer to that question. The poem is called How I Met Your Mother. I saw her at a party, walked up and said, "How would you feel about getting married? Buying a house, enduring the agony of childbirth a couple of times, watching a lot of Netflix together, dining out." I'm thinking specifically of the osso buco at Ruggeri's, getting a dog, negotiating mortgages, and finally sitting by me in those last days, arranging the funeral, tidying up, then starting your strange new life, the one without me. How does that sound? And she sipped her mojito and said, "What are we waiting for?" Well, that's how it happened. Be careful what you ask for. So here's a book, here's a poem from a chapbook. And I have two kids, a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, Michael and Alex. And Alex is 9. And I can't really remember being 8 very well. I don't remember 10 or 11 too clearly, but I kind of remember the feeling of being 9 and watching him being 9. His nineness reminds me of my nineness. So I tried to write a poem in which I tried to resurrect what it felt like to be 9. And the poem is called 9. I'm standing by the pop machine at the gas station, drinking a root beer. It cost a dime, my whole allowance. My bike, a J.C. Higgins 3-speed, looks cool. I just washed it and waxed the blue fenders. Grown-ups are moving around me in kind of a fog. Actually, I feel sorry for grown-ups with their neckties, their dark jackets, and their serious talk. I am wearing low-top Keds. Their shoes are hard and gigantic. Try climbing a tree in those shoes. How am I supposed to know that an old white-haired guy, a grown-up, is watching me from his desk in the future, writing down every move I make? Why would anybody even do that? If there's one thing I don't like, it's writing in division. This root beer is actually excellent. It's a hot day. My fenders are waxed. 9. Okay, one of the oldest themes, the greatest themes in poetry, uh, is getting old, aging, and strangely enough, that seems to be happening to me. And here's another poem set in that cafe. And the poem was kind of inspired. John was talking about hearing lines or phrases that get him wanting to write a poem. And this poem is kind of about that comment that you hear all the time now, the phrase, no problem. Like you're sitting at a restaurant and you ask the wait person, hey, do you think I could have another glass of water? And they look at you and they say, no problem. Like they're doing you a favor, but like, isn't that your job? And so this waitress kept saying no problem to me, and this poem came out of it. So it's set at my favorite little street side cafe. It's called No Problem. I sit here aging at the street side cafe, giving off the sickly yellow smoke of decay, while people walk by, pretending not to notice, glancing away into the distance or down at their cell phones, doing their best out of politeness or shock to ignore me sitting here aging, and I don't blame them. It's hard to watch. And now the waitress, in her burning beauty, her lustrous, incandescent womanhood, walks up to me in a radiant cloud of youth and asks if I want another iced latte macchiato. But I'm aging so fast, I'm racing so quickly through time, I can barely hear her. And furthermore, I know what she really wants to say is, your aging is kind of gross. It's kind of a turnoff. Maybe you could go do it somewhere else where it doesn't frighten the customers. And besides, it's not like there's anything I can do about it. And as I sit here with my skin peeling off and crumbling up like toilet paper and my hair falling out on the table and my teeth rotting and my bones turning to glass and all my organs drowning in the sludge of age, I croak to her as she floats in the cool, creamy oasis of her youthful lustrousness. I do manage to croak, yeah, another iced latte macchiato would be great. And from the far side of the universe, from the beautiful, bountiful, burning galaxy of her late teens, she says to the fast decaying, maybe starting to smell bad, just about to be covered with flies, leathery old carcass I'm becoming, she says, no problem. Except that there is actually a problem. All right. I'm going to do two more poems. And this one is called, this again is Valentine's Day for my wife, Valentine's poem. And it's called Call of the Fox. And it's about a trip we took a few years ago up to Michigan in the summer. Call of the Fox. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the call of a fox in heat, but it's quite an extraordinary sound. The summer we rented the cottage in the woods, we would waken in the middle of the night to the mating call of the foxes. It sounds like one of my freshmen barfing up hot dogs and wild turkey after his first frat party, a sound that makes you want to puke yourself out of sympathy or sheer disgust with the whole situation. How the imperatives of desire drive us into the dark woods, sick with the incandescent loneliness of the flesh. However, after listening for a while, my wife remarked that it was actually kind of funny, as if nature, usually so careful about beauty, about getting it just right, had for once screwed up and created something even Mary Oliver couldn't get behind. And then she said, well, since we're up anyway and there's nothing else to do, which is why my wife is my wife. And I'm going to read one more poem. It's the last poem in that chapbook, Cheap Motels. And again, in the Valentine mode, this is a poem from my parents, my mother and father, long deceased. But I'll bet, like many people here, you wonder about their life together right before you were born, right before everything changed for them and obviously for you. What was that life like before they were born? This poem is set in 1948. I was born in 1951. And the poem is called Salad. It is a summer evening in 1948. My mother and father are in the backyard of the little duplex they rented. Summer evening in St. Louis. I have yet to exist, but nonetheless, I know that 2 hamburgers are on the grill and the beer is cold in the humid dusk. A dog barks next door. My father turns the burgers. My mother goes in to set the table for 2 and make a salad. There's more beer in the fridge. They don't even have a TV. Nobody does. In the kitchen, that does not include me, the burgers are great, and my father says something that makes my mother laugh so hard that I can hear her in my backyard tonight in Cleveland, where thanks to them, I exist. At the grill, a beer in my hand, a dog barking, my wife in the kitchen, making a salad. Thank you very much. Thanks a million, Shawn, for having me on.
Oh my gosh, George. I almost forgot I'm enjoying listening to you so much. I forgot, oh yeah, I've got to host the show. But I cannot thank you enough for reading today and also for taking time out of your, I know, very busy schedule to be our judge last year. You just enrich all of us with your wonderfully human poems, and you are such a generous poet. I mean, I wrote to you on a whim after I read, your chapbook and asked, and then I found then that led me to Poetry Town, and then I asked you if I could use a quote of yours as an epigraph, and you were so generous. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask him to be a judge. I know he's going to say no. There's no way. And then I think you said, sure, no problem, right? But But Billy Collins is why I started writing poetry. You and your poems are why I keep wanting to write poems and keep reading poems. You are just such a gift to all of us who strive to write poetry that really authentically represents the human experience in such a real and not simple, but just accessible way
Yeah.
and with humor and with just all the realness of life. I enjoy it so much. And this reading was just the highlight of everything today. Everybody was so fantastic. I'm just blessed beyond belief right now. So
I
thank you,
just
George.
thank you, and I just wish some of us are going to get together in the near future. That's got to happen because it would really be fun to all.
It really would. I can't imagine anything better, really. That would be
Let's make it
fantastic.
happen.
Well, let's have a big round of applause for all of our readers today. I want to thank our four amazing poets, John Arthur, Katie Dozier, John Wojtowicz, and George Bilgere. And thank you, our wonderful audience, for supporting our authors and joining us to celebrate poetry in another edition of the Poetry Box Live. We'll be back here next month, Saturday, March 14th, with four new poets, Debbie Hall, Angelica Quirk, Julia Potiker, and Priscilla Bernard Whiten. I hope you can join us. And for all of you poets out there, the Poetry Box Chapbook Prize is now open for submissions through March 15th. Our guest judge this year is the beautiful poet Rosemary Watola Tromer. And you can find all the details and guidelines for the contest on our website at thepoetrybox.com. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. There's a sign up form at the bottom of each webpage. Thanks again for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend and go Seahawks!